Hello, and welcome to Cycle's 8th episode of our podcast. Today we have Elton Carneiro from Backblaze, and we have a lot of really exciting things to talk about today. I've been looking forward to filming this episode for a while now. Elton and I we've been in contact we've been working with Backblaze for a number of years now, but Elton and I have started talking recently, and sorry, not even recently. It's been months now. I don't know. Yeah. Time's a bit of a blur, but just really excited to be able to do this podcast with Backblaze and have Elton here. And so I guess starting off, Elton, it'd be great to hear what you do at Backblaze, maybe an introduction for people who have not heard about Backblaze before, and just yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, and thanks for the invite. Really excited to be doing this podcast with you, and we'll dive into the details more. But I was super impressed when I came across Cycle, and I'm still super impressed in all the things you guys have accomplished. But a little bit about me: my name is Elton Carneiro. I head up the partnership team here at Backblaze. My role covers all our technology partners, alliance partners, channel, as well as our MSP programs. And for you guys who have not heard of Backblaze, we are a platform, storage platform in the cloud that allows customers to store any kinds of data in the cloud. We offer two services: our computer backup service as well as our B2 cloud storage service. Computer backup service is offered at $7 per device per month. Backup as much data as you want, but the platform that we built on top of our computer backup service backend infrastructure is our B2 cloud storage. And that's available for you at half a penny a gig, $5 per terabyte. Store any kinds of data you wish. We've been doing this for a long time. The company was founded in 2007 with the computer backup service. We've evolved, we've grown. We have over close to 2 exabytes of data under management, 500,000 customers globally, and we do what we do best, is store data.
No, excellent. And so you said 2 exabytes of data. Do you have any rough idea how many drives that is, or how many servers, or anything that helps put that in perspective to people who might not realize just how much data 2 exabytes are?
Totally, yeah. So if you haven't had a chance, I highly encourage you to look at our blog. We have a quarterly published blog that we put out every quarter around our hard drive stats. And we have close to 200,000 spinning hard drives in our data centers across multiple regions globally. We carry a number of different hard drives, different sizes, different formats, different companies. We basically spread our business across all the large hard drive manufacturers. But close to 200,000, and we also introduced in our latest edition of the hard drive stats blog how SSDs play a role in our infrastructure. So highly encourage you to, if you haven't had a chance, take a look. If you're out looking for hard drives, to purchase hard drives for whatever reason, we give you all the annualized failure rates of those hard drives, how they're performing, which models are performing better than others. So it gives you an understanding of where you should put your money in terms of buying storage.
And as you mentioned that, I remember one of the first times I ever came across Backblaze. This was before we had formed, before our company started working together back in, I think we've been working together since early 2019 now, maybe even late 2018. But one of the first things I came across with Backblaze was one of those blogs that you put out about the hard drive, how many hard drives you had, and the failure rate by different hard manufacturer and things like that. And I was like, man, that's actually really interesting, because that's almost data you could sell back to the manufacturers as how reliable is your stuff. And because obviously if you have 200,000 drives that you are working with, that's definitely at scale. So you actually have real numbers to indicate which are better than others, or at least more reliable, maybe is the better term.
Yeah, totally. And so the reason for us to do this is more to give back to the community, right? We understand that nearly every person out there owns some form of a hard drive, either it's in their laptop, in their desktop, and a lot of consumers, also prosumers, go out and buy NAS devices where they need to go and buy hard drives that fit into NAS device. We understand that like with anything else, some things will fail better more than others. Some things are built more durable than others. First, it's just about giving back to the community and letting the community know what's going on in our data centers, how we see the things that we have purchased performing in our data centers. And that goes back to kind of the mantra and the philosophy of Backblaze. This is going back to the transparency factor and just making sure that we talk about what we do openly in our blog. So other than the hard drive stats, I'm sure for viewers out there who want to learn more about Backblaze, lots and lots of different stories, articles on the company, where we came from, where we're going, some of the cool stuff we've done, as well as what our thoughts are on the various different industry aspects that up and coming.
Excellent. And I do have one last question on the drives thing. This is me nerding out for a moment. So I remember when I first created an account with Backblaze, when I was just playing around with that years ago, you had a thing called, and I might be remembering wrong, but I believe it was called a fireball or something like that. And it was this, well, I guess maybe I mean, you do a much better job of explaining it, but my recollection of it was that it was this storage device that I could rent from you, fill up with data, so that way I didn't have to send potentially terabytes of data over the internet, and then physically mail it back to you. What's that about? Obviously, I've never used it, but it's amazing that some companies have that much data that's important to them.
Totally, yeah, and you're totally right. So the Fireball service, it's a rapid ingest service that we offer to the state, right? We've actually increased the capacity of each Fireball and how much data a customer can store on it. But the idea is just that you rent this device from us, and we ship it to you. You basically connect it into your network, copy all the data you want to copy over to Backblaze, ship it back to us. We'll load it up, using our fast, connectivity into our cloud, and store it in the bucket of your choice. The whole premise around this is we totally get that you can only send so much data to the internet connection that you have, right? To put things into perspective, a 1 gigabit per second, if you were to transfer data 24 hours a day, you'd be getting about 10 terabytes in terms of data transfer per day. On our Fireball, we have a capacity of 100 gigs, so 96 gigs, more or less. And, that over the internet was going to take you about 9 to 10 days to transfer the data. With the Fireball service, you can plug it in the network, use any solution you want to copy data, and we have integrations with all kinds of different, technologies out there that if you're using them on premise. Otherwise, even Windows copy or, Linux copy command, you copy the data over to the Fireball, and, you send it back to us. And your data goes into your bucket, and voila.
I mean, it's just it's just so neat. Like, it reminds me of I'm guessing you being in data storage, you've seen there's a Wikipedia article about it, and I believe it's like IP over carrier pigeon or something like that. Where have you come across that? Where it's like someone literally was sending a flash drive with attached to a carrier pigeon to transmit data, and it was amazing because it's a super high latency, and then suddenly when you get the data, it's this huge subset of it, and it's interesting. Just like to think back, and I know that with internet speeds faster now, today it's less so important, but back when this initial test was done, you had a max internet speed of maybe 10 megabits, and so the fact that someone could attach a flash drive to a bird and just send it, and you had more throughput via literally a physical bird, was actually really exciting and kind of funny.
The term I used to use a lot is sneakernet.
Yes,
basically,
yes.
Someone filling a backpack full of hard drives and running across, traveling whichever way of commuting they want to choose to travel across from one place to another, and moving data faster that way. We've evolved.
Yes.
We have lots of people have gigabit connections going into their home. Multiple 10 gigs going into data centers, etc. We have tons of bandwidth coming into our data center. Like, we have over 800 gigabits per second coming to our data center, and so we can take in at any point in time. If we do the math around that, right, 10 gigabits can push 100 terabytes a day. 100 gigabits can push a petabyte a day. So if you calculate 100 gigabits times 8, we can take in likelihoods of 8 to 9 petabytes of data at any point in time.
That is insane,
Yeah,
insane. But that helps also bridge these conversations, right? Because like
yeah,
as we cycle, we're looking for a partner for storage because as I've already mentioned during this call and for anyone
yeah,
who's not or sorry during this podcast and for anyone who's not familiar, we did partner with Backblaze back in again I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it was late 2018, maybe early 2019. I don't know. Time's a bit of a blur, but we integrated with Backblaze because we wanted to be able to store our base container images, right? And that was a perspective that we took that was maybe different than a lot of other container companies in the space. Is a lot of other companies said, hey, we're going to integrate with Docker Hub or some other registry, but the idea was that you would still store the main container images yourself. And anytime that container platform would need that image, it would repull it from your data source. And our thought was, well, what happens if someday if Docker Hub changes their pricing model, which they ended up doing, or what if they limit how many images you can pull, which they ended up doing? Like there's so many things that we tried to eliminate those risks to us that we said, hey, when you pull in an image, we are going to actually store a copy of that image ourselves. And as a company, we decided we need to find a reliable solid object storage provider that allows us to store an infinite amount of data without us having to be responsible for deploying new servers or installing some open source software to help manage a huge deployment of storage. So obviously Backblaze was the company that we chose, and it was really neat because like again as you're talking about the capabilities of Backblaze today and how much data you can store and how much the bandwidth that can come in and out is just insane. Because like when we were going through that initial testing, we tried a couple different providers before we ended up saying, hey, Backblaze is the answer here. And it was crazy because like some of these providers like, hey, we had good download speeds, but the upload speeds were terrible, or maybe the opposite, and or sometimes it was unreliable. And so with Backblaze, it was like that perfect. I don't know. I guess that perfect spot, or maybe the criteria that we needed that allowed us to solve that problem. And so we started talking. What I think 3 or 4 months ago now. All right, let's continue building this partnership on, and beyond just being able to store these base container images, we wanted to be able to store backups and things, which was a feature that we had requested from a number of we wanted to store backups that our users were generating as our users. That was a highly requested feature that a number of our customers were asking for, right? And so I don't want to get into backups yet, but because I think there's a lot of fun stuff to dive into. But specifically, I want to talk about why it made a lot of sense for our two companies just to not only had we worked together before, but to make that partnership more, to increase the depth of it and work together in so many other ways. And I know that backups is the start of it, and there's some other things we have planned for down the road. As I think the thing that resonated really well with us is we both realized that at the end of the day, we are our best. Maybe best is the wrong word, but we understand developers. We work with developers. And if it'd be great to hear about Backblaze's experience with selling to developers and working with developers and just simply that.
yeah, totally. And it's interesting because the thing that you just that you integrated Backblaze for, and recently at least, is going back to how we built our business and the fundamental use case on what we built our business, which is backup, right? We allowed customers to back up the data to the cloud, have a copy in the cloud, so if anything were to happen, they could easily recover, restore from where they left off. To segue into kind of audience that a cycle is focused on, as well as also what we are focused on today, is the developer segment. We started seeing a lot of our customers come to us and say, hey, we are building in the cloud. We need reliable cloud storage so we can continue building in the cloud, and we need to make sure that we can serve our entire business from the cloud. We don't have on-prem infrastructure. Everything is running in the cloud, and we need the storage platform. And why this happened, when this happened, if we go back to last year, we launched the S3 compatible APIs. So what this allowed us to do is this allowed us to offer our public cloud storage using the same API that our developer customers were accustomed to when they started developing on Amazon or on Google or the clouds out there. And by doing so, we made it super simple for developers to be able to make that switch from using those clouds to start using Backblaze B2 for, you know, for their storage needs. And we started basically getting a lot of the customers who had built on Amazon and they built on other clouds, starting to move to Backblaze B2 and using us. And the use cases are mostly around how do I serve up content efficiently? How do I serve up data efficiently? Not only store data efficiently, but also to be able to retrieve it and give it back to people who need to consume that data in various different forms. And we've built an ecosystem around our storage platform. We focus on storage. That's what we do. We love doing storage, but we've built an ecosystem of partners around what we've built to allow our customers to leverage the features, functionalities of building in the cloud. Whether it's they need to use a CDN, whether they're looking to run compute, whether they're looking to do things like image resizing or video transcoding. This can all be done in the cloud today, and you're not limited to having to do that a capex purchase of licenses, software, infrastructure on premise. This can all be done in the cloud. And we're seeing a lot more developers starting to build in the cloud, store in the cloud, consume in the cloud, versus having to worry about buying on-premise infrastructure.
So with the developers, the developer segment, as you referenced that you've been working with, have you found any like really niche kind of verticals that you've seen most of your customers fit into? I mean, obviously Backblaze does a lot with backups, but did you see that like you have a lot of companies coming to you for storing videos, or is like there a specific niche that you've just encountered more than another?
Totally. And so one of the biggest niches is being basically around delivery, right? So content delivery, whether it's a company that's building out a photo library for their customers, being able to deliver photos over the web, whether it's a company building out video. So we have a case study with a company called Canopy. So Canopy is like the Netflix, but for libraries, etc., where they can basically host a whole bunch of content that isn't Netflix audience, but is more for education purposes and so on. And they had built on Amazon, and they had decided to move to Backblaze B2 because we were able to offer them the storage platform that they needed to be able to deliver to their customers, attached with a CDN network that allowed them to basically get that optimal edge experience at really low latency to the edge experience, and be able to allow their consumers to consume the content that they have sitting in Backblaze B2. So lots of different use cases, but definitely the video image workflows, being able to deliver that is a niche, as well as think of anyone out there that's building any solution, any product out there, whether it's like tying back to Jake, what you're doing with Cycle, needing to back up your cloud infrastructure, cloud containers to Backblaze, to being able to just store data, whatever the data may be. Just if you need to store it in the cloud, the different APIs exist today. One of the most common ones is the S3 API in terms of interfacing with cloud storage, and we offer that. So definitely, again, endless different workflows, but feel free to come reach out to us, and we're happy to engage with you and talk you through how it's possible to use Backblaze.
And I guess with that last note, I saw on your website, I think it was last week, that you had I don't want to call it a promotion, but you had some sort of announcement up where you were talking about how if people were hosting over at S3, or I think it was S3, and was it Google was the other one, how you were saying, hey, if you're hosting there today, reach out, and we have a set of tools and things like that that can help move those companies over to Backblaze. If you want to dive into that.
Yeah, totally. So, going back to what I mentioned, last year we launched the S3 APIs, right? And we started seeing all these customers who had built on Amazon. One of the biggest objections that we faced when we started, targeting customers that we wanted to kind of save money, save costs, but also, look at leaving Amazon for whatever reason. The biggest objection is the egress fees on Amazon or other clouds, right? The term being used is like, these clouds are like Hotel California. Once you check in, you can never check out, right? And they make it really expensive for customers to check out and move the data out of those clouds. So we got crafty. We put together a solution, a service actually, that a customer pays $0 for. If they have more than 10 terabytes and they're on Amazon, Google, name your cloud out there, we'll migrate that data for you at no cost to the customer. And we take care of the egress fees, we take care of the migration fees. It's pretty much like a white glove service that you get to benefit as a customer. And your data basically ends up in Backblaze B2 for you to continue consuming. And the good part about it is that all you do is switch an endpoint. And with technologies like CDNs, you can get really smart by putting in rules into CDN that says, hey, for the first X amount of time while the migration is happening, make sure the query goes first to your original origin store. If you get back to 4.4, redirect to Backblaze B2. And after a certain amount of time, when majority of your content is sitting in Backblaze B2, you can have the request flow to Backblaze B2. And if you get a 4.4, go back to the other origin store. So you can actually still remain in production, still remain serving your customers. And from your customer's standpoint, nothing's going on. But you're actually moving your entire storage from one platform and one cloud to another cloud.
I mean, excellent, excellent, excellent. And like, so on that same note, like, do you have any idea what the largest migration you've performed yet is?
I would say it's over a petabyte.
And do you have any idea how long that took to migrate?
So we as I mentioned, we can do anywhere from 200 to 300 terabytes a day out of any of the public clouds. Can we go faster? Probably, but at the same time, right? We have realized that there's a sweet spot in terms of moving content out, whereby we're bound to be, hit less issues overall. Obviously, the faster you go, the more issues you get. But we've been able to push the envelope to around 200 to 300 terabytes a day. We've more like been shy to go faster. Not that we can't go faster. It's just for us that those speeds are perfectly fine for a customer wanting to leave. The fact that we can do it that fast is just super impressive.
No, it absolutely is. It's just, I mean, like, it's hard to comprehend how much data that is. Like, if you actually think about it, like, and you realize, like, just, copying even a terabyte, how much that is. And then when you realize that, okay, now you're doing that, exponentially is just insane.
Yeah. And so the complexity is not only around, how much data. There's also complexity on how many objects are you migrating, right? It's, you could have, a terabyte file and then 10 of them makes 10 terabytes. Great. Moving 10 objects is not that challenging. But if you have, let's say, 10 terabyte that is basically composed of millions and millions of objects, the complexity there is far, it's far higher than moving 10 objects at a terabyte each, right? So it's size and amount of data and amount of files that definitely makes it interesting, makes it challenging for some of the migrations that we've done. And we've done something like 300 400 million objects at a time.
That's insane. That's insane. And so, again, as we talked about developers and things, it's really neat just being able to work with another company that, again, because with Cycle, we 95, maybe even 99% of our audience is developers. Like that's who we work with. And I think, well, not even I think, but compared to most companies in our space, where like if you're a container orchestration platform, most of the time you're working with more DevOps than developers. Cycle's whole goal and focus is to allow developers to have the capabilities of a DevOps team without necessarily needing a DevOps team to be in the middle, right? So it's really neat because we, both Cycle and Backblaze, are able to have that relationship directly with those developers, and in a way that we can empower them to do a lot of things, right? And so I mean, obviously the partnership makes complete sense between both of our companies. But as we dive into what is the next step of this partnership look like, and obviously Backblaze has done backups for a long time. Now it's neat to be able to offer that functionality to Cycle, and one of the ways that we've done it is actually really neat because obviously between our two companies we had a conversation last week where it was how can we, so I guess maybe let me talk about the problem first. The problem is if a user has a container and that container has a volume attached to it, and that volume has maybe 9 GB of storage used, but the volume is a 10 GB volume in total, but it's 9 GB used, so there's only 1 GB free. We can't compress that 9 GB down to fit in that extra gig, to allow us to build a full backup. So the question that we had last week, when in the Backblaze channel is, how can we stream this data in a way that allows us to? The streaming was something that we had already built in, but we didn't realize the issue was, if we don't know the total size of that file beforehand, the API the Backblaze API expected us to know that file size ahead of time, and when we didn't even know ourselves, it made it a lot more tricky. And so and the reasoning behind that is obviously purely, obviously for Backblaze it makes a lot of sense, because as you are getting ready to accept a file to put on your different pods and things, you need to know what is the total size that a user wants to store, so that you can properly put that where it needs to be. In our case, we said, hey, we don't want to store anything on our infrastructure larger than a small subset, because if a user doesn't have that much extra space sitting around on their server to do a backup, we don't want to fill up their server with a backup and prevent that download from actually happening, right? That upload from actually happening. And so anyway, that was kind of the context of the problem. And then so the solution ended up being that we allowed it, or we wrote the functionality so that as we start building that backup, we write the first 50 megabytes to disk. And then from that point, we can say, all right, we know that this is either going to be larger than 50 megabytes, or it's 50 megabytes or less. And that allows us to use the proper API call at Backblaze to figure out how we should upload that data, right? But it's really neat, because the neat thing about Backblaze's API integration is that if you need to upload a large file, obviously you can use the large, I think it's just called large file.
Large file upload, yeah.
Yeah, you can use the large file upload. But the neat thing about that is you only have to know the size of the part, not the entire file. And so we built this kind of buffer process where we would only buffer 50 megabytes at a time, and then we'd say, hey, is this a full part, and then upload it, and we'd automatically increase it along the way. So it's really neat, because the how that works for our users now is, if they have, whether they have 2 megabytes of data in maybe it's a brand new database that they just want to start backing up from day one, or maybe it's a customer that has 10 terabytes of videos that they want to back up, Cycle will do those backups with only using 50 megabytes of data at a time. And so it's just really cool, because we're not taking someone's valuable disk space where they're running their actual applications and using a big portion of that for those backups, which is really cool. So we obviously, we have a number, we've gone through a lot of testing with that, and the fact that it's working really well and everything is just really, really cool with being able to do that. And
totally. And the key part there, which I feel that I think you should highlight, is that you're able to solve this by looking at our documentation and reading that, because I don't think I responded quick enough before you solved that problem. So documentation definitely helps guide that. But the difference is, there is a difference between our file upload versus our large file upload. The large file upload, you all you have to do is make sure you specify the part size, and as long as all parts except for the last one are the same, you won't get any issues. The last part is allowed to be smaller than the other parts, because that's the way the large file upload works in that sense. But definitely, a lot of our developer partners, as well, developers, start looking at our APIs, and the same thing exists on Amazon S3 API, whereby if depending on the size of the file you want to put, there's two ways to do it. You can just do an upload file option, route, or the large file upload. The large file uploads allows you to break it down into multiple different parts, and then you concatenate all the parts at the end to form that large object. Right? So it's a similar boat.
Well, and the other thing that I like about it is the fact that with your API, I'm sure other people support this as well. I haven't looked extensively, but I like that with Backblaze's API that you can specifically say, hey, I will append an SSH hash, or sorry, not SSH, an SHA1 hash
Yeah.
at the end of the segment that I'm sending you. That way, instead of me having to know that ahead of time, I can build a streamable format, and then at the very end of that each individual part, I can attach that hash then. And so that's how this ended up working really well, is because I don't have to, like, so I wrote a buffer that as literally as I'm reading in data, I am building that hash as I go. So it's not like I have to build this part, go back, read it again, and calculate the hash at that time. It's literally just using, like, so I don't know if we've talked about this extensively, but 100% of Cycle's backend is written in Golang. And so within Golang, like, you kind of have this like inherent kind of push to build everything in a streamable format where you're working with, it's either 4 kilobyte blocks or 64 kilobyte blocks. I don't remember which, but the idea is that most of those functions are built kind of inherently with that approach. So the fact that we were able to build that approach into Backblaze as well is really, really neat. And again, it allows our users to be able to back up extremely large amounts of data without using more of that disk space, and then have those backups be on a reliable object storage provider like Backblaze is huge.
Yeah. I don't know, Jake. I think you basically laid the foundation of a great blog post. So looking forward to.
Absolutely. But the other thing that I want to talk about, because we're talking about this backup functionality. The day this podcast goes live, that backup functionality will also be going live, and so when simply that. So when users will be able to, if you're watching this right now, the backup functionality is live. Feel free to give it a test. If you encounter any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out. But there's one other thing that I'd like to talk about with the backups that is really neat in how we implemented this, as opposed to some other strategies that we've seen other companies do. And as we go back to kind of that streamable approach that I was just talking about, there's a lot of backup solutions that say, like, hey, like, just point me at a directory and I'll go back it up for you, right? But that requires extra disk space, right? Because, like, if you have, like, let's say you're working with a MySQL database or a cluster and you do like a MySQL dump, do you really want to dump all that data to a directory just to back it up, only to delete that directory, right? And so the approach that Cycle took is, we don't look for a file path, we don't look for a directory, we just capture the standard output, right? So the idea is that you can run any command you want, and as long as you output it back to the console during that backup command, we will capture it in 64 kilobyte blocks as it comes back to the console, and then output it and then save that as your backup, right? So that means, like, suppose you wanted to back up a database. It's easy as, the MySQL, MySQL dump command, and just output it to the console. We'll go and save that as your backup. You're not writing to disk. You're not writing to anything other than a socket that is going to go directly to Backblaze. But the neat thing is, the other neat thing there is, like, if someone says, hey, well, I do want to back up files. How can I do that? You could use tar and then just pipe the output from tar back to the standard output. Right? So it's really cool because you could still back up those directories. You're just going to wrap it into a tar command. But you can also tar GZ it along the way, so you're streaming that output to the console in the same process.
And you're compressing it.
And you're compressing it. So it's just really cool that we've done it that way. And then one of the last things that we're working on right now internally before this goes fully live is the restore. And so what we're trying to figure out how to get working right now is, if I from the Cycle interface, if I click a backup that I've already done and I want to restore it, I should be able to have another command, but then the standard the standard input rather is the reverse socket. So we're just going to pipe that output right back in through the standard input. That way, it's just really neat because it allows people to build, like, native backups. Because, like, one of the things that we decided as we were doing this is, we don't want to just back up files, because, like, suppose you said, hey, I have this database, I want to back it up, and you're just pointing it to literally, like, var/lib/MySQL. The issue there is, if we start backing up that directory and maybe one of your users or something that is consuming that database changes data, or, in the middle of us backing it up, you might have a backup that has, literally, different data than you expect it to have because it was created in the middle of a backup, right? And so it's really neat because now we are allowing our developers to use native backup functionality. Like MySQL dump knows how to lock tables during a backup and things like that. So it's just really cool of just being able to give users that native backup functionality, but abstracting it so easy that as long as they can get it to a standard output and then pipe it back in via standard input, they can do whatever they want with it. And
Yep.
so
That's awesome. So that is idea is that you're running a command in your command prompt, MySQL, whatever credentials, dump this table. You're basically using your greater than sign, and then you basically have the cycle a module that's basically picking up and storing it in Backblaze B2.
exactly. So when a container is up and running, it's obviously in its own namespaces and stuff, so it's isolated from everything else. What we will do is when you have your command, and you can say, hey, here's my command, and you can actually define that command with a cron string as well. So even though we're not using like cron tabs or anything, you can actually use a traditional cron string. So you can say, hey, I want this to run hourly, I want this to run on the third minute of every hour, or however you'd want to define with your cron string. You can use that cron string with that command, and we will actually Cycle will jump inside of your container, run that command, pipe the output back out of the container into our compute process, which is just running on all of our customer servers, and then that compute process is what is actually taking care of moving it back to Backblaze. So it makes it super easy because you don't have to install anything extra in a container to be able to use this functionality. As long as you have that like MySQL dump or Mongo dump or whatever built into that container, you don't need anything else.
That just sounds super interesting, and I would say a great approach to solving this problem without utilizing any disk space, which is not surprising coming from you, Jake, because I am still super impressed with your SSH proxy. Like that is by far the most secure way to secure an environment by not enabling SSH, and so definitely not surprised that you're able to solve it this way. So great work, and I still say that this is grounds for a blog post at some point, because there's a lot of cool technology that you've done and cool stuff you've done in making this happen.
Thank you. I'll absolutely have to do a blog entry about it, and I've actually heard that from even a number of our customers. And the developers that are using Cycle is it's like, hey Jake, like we like a lot of the content you're putting out, it's really interesting, but we'd love to have a deep dive into certain of these things where it's literally just nerding out for like a 2.5 hour webinar on how certain things are built and why we've taken the decision that we have, because like again, like I mean obviously you know enough about Cycle to know that our approach is like we've only focused on the 80%, right? Like there's a lot of other companies out there that try to solve every single use case, but then you have all this unnecessary complexities and all these other things. So our goal is how can we like empower our developers to do what they need to do, but keeping it very simple. And so that's where like when we started building this backup functionality, we had like, hey, you can choose whether you want a directory or you could choose this, or you want like we gave like 10 different options. And then it's like no, let's give a single command, and if you want to back up a directory, use tar, use some of these other things, and make it so easy. Because I mean, just like you said, like our goal is keeping things simple, opening the door so you can use it. But yeah, I love that you brought up the SSH proxy. That is absolutely my favorite feature in Cycle.
I love it. Like I like even like again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the way I explain this. Explain Cycle to the people I talk to. Right. I go back about 15 years ago, where if you wanted to build a website, you'd go out there and hire a web developer. They would come back, they would basically build your website based on your requirements. Boom, you have a website. Fast forward to today, there's so many different platforms out there that allow you to build a beautiful website. And that's what I look at Cycle as. Way back when, you go and start launching your Docker Kubernetes platform, you need a DevOps engineer. Fast forward to now and the future, you don't need that. You need Cycle, and it does it all for you.
Oh, absolutely, and it's so neat to be able to see. Like we have companies that have moved to Cycle from Kubernetes, and I mean we have everything from we have some smaller companies that are just using Cycle to host WordPress websites, to larger companies that are building AWS Lambda competitors on top of our platform, and doing lots of things with AI. And then we have a couple of fintech companies that are doing like some really neat things, and then we have some networking companies that are. I mean, it's so cool because like we've empowered these companies to like out of all the companies that are using Cycle today, I think only one of them actually has a DevOps engineer working for them. Every other customer we've had has realized most of them came to us actually saying, hey, we were getting ready to build a DevOps team, but it looks like with Cycle we don't need to. And it's really nice that many of these companies have been on Cycle for multi years now, and that story has continued to persist, that they did not need a DevOps engineer to help their development team use Cycle. And it's just really nice to be able to actually sit back and say hey, we set out with this goal, and to actually have the results today to look back and show that we've actually accomplished that is phenomenal. And now it's just we need to build more awareness, and being able to work with companies like Backblaze to help tell that story is huge, and I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, totally. It's like you guys, the approach to solving the problem is extremely interesting, and I personally, I enjoy learning about how the features are built. Every time you tell me, I go, wow, I would have never thought of that, but I'm glad you thought of it and you solved it that way.
No, and I mean, again, but I think the other thing is you have to be okay with scrapping something. We started this backup thing 3 times in the last 4 weeks now, and it was only early last week that I'm no, we made that. I mean, there's so many times within Cycle that we've done that, not just with backups, but with other things where you set off the first goal is hey, we're just going to build this functionality in, and then you start thinking about it and you're we can make this easier on our users. And I think that's the big thing about us is with our team, we put a lot of focus. I mean, our story at the end of the day is all about simplicity. So if we can make a function, if we can make a feature, or I guess functionality, simpler for our users, even if that requires us having to rebuild something that we just started, we will absolutely do that, because
and that resonates with so many developers out there, because the number of times I don't develop much code these days, but the number of times back in the day whereby I wrote a piece of a functional code, and I would come back to it a day later and I go, what the hell was I thinking? And then just scrap it and then start again from scratch, because you just look at it and you go, this is not going to work long term. There's so many flaws in it, the way the design, the way you thought about solving the problem. And then through this process, going back to what you said, if you can recognize that there's a simpler, easier way to do it, and are willing to scrap what you did to make it simple and easy, that is the approach. And it kind of also ties into what we do at Backblaze. We try and make things super simple for our customers. From our user interface, from our APIs, and us all around as a company. Is our goal is to be that simple, trusted, affordable cloud storage platform for our customers.
Absolutely, and I mean, I working with your team has been phenomenal. Not just for obviously the performance of the B2 service, but with the team itself. And it's always been anytime we've needed help, the Backblaze team has been there to immediately jump in and say, hey, what. How can we help? What's the issue? And that's what you want in a partner at the end of the day, is a company that's not just, hey, we'd like you to help us grow our revenue, but someone who's there to help you get out of the trenches when something's not working the way it is, right? And so, which I guess brings me to kind of the final point here is what's next as our companies work together. And I know, so obviously you and I have had enough conversations that there's a really big feature outside of backups that we'll be working together on. That'll likely be a early next year feature that we launch. And so I don't want to give too much of it away, but I think that we can kind of I don't know, I'm hesitant, I'm trying to think do I drop a hint, or do I just save it? Because it's really cool, and I think it's game changing for how containers can consume storage. So it's
so what I would say is let's get our audience to weigh in after this thing, because we can always respond to this and give them hints.
Excellent.
But if you want to give a hint, I'm okay with that too. But
I think the hint that I just gave of it will allow containers to consume storage in a very unique way. We'll leave it at that, and we'll see if anyone can start to guess what that is.
There you go. And maybe we'll throw a prize for the winner who guesses right.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great idea. We should absolutely do that. And
Yeah.
For anyone else, who's been watching along or listening, if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or I think we're on Google Podcasts too. If you have any questions that have come up, or you'd like to learn more about Cycle or Backblaze, feel free to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn. And obviously we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And Elton, it's been a great chatting with you. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thanks, Jake. It's been a pleasure as well, and really excited for what Cycle you guys are doing and the future that beholds.
Excellent. And I guess before we wrap up, would you like to mention Backblaze's Developer Day?
Yes. So Backblaze is hosting a Developer Day on October 21st. It's good to be more technical focused, a lot of content, launching new partnerships, as well as allowing our customers to understand how developers consume storage and the various different use cases that some I articulated on this podcast, but more in general, that's the focus. Definitely looking at highlighting some of the successes we've seen in terms of allowing our developers to build in the cloud, and as well as continue getting feedback and learning from our developer audience to what we can also do to improve and be better at what we do.
Excellent.
October 21st. If it's all the information is available on our website today. We put out a blog about it. Feel free to register, and I look forward to seeing you guys there.
Perfect, and we will definitely be there.
Yes.
Our Cycle team, but. Excellent. Looking forward to it. And again, thank you so much for your time, Ellen. It's been great. And looking forward to the next time we can do a podcast when we talk about that next feature, likely early 2022.
Yep.
So, excellent.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah. Cheers.